This is Rudy Giuliani, America's Mayor Live from New York. And it sure is live. I don't know. You know of anybody that sued me today? I'm getting sued every day for things I didn't do, have no knowledge of. Some of them, it's physically impossible for me to do. I am accused here in this complaint, which seems to have been written by a novice lawyer with misspellings and mistakes. And this is the Hunter lawsuit. I mean, this is hardly a first-class document. It's 13 pages of complete garbage, or maybe 14 pages of complete garbage. It alleges that I, along with my attorney, Robert Costello, hacked. I assure you, I don't know how to hack. I have no idea in a million years how to hack, nor do I want to, or I don't want to learn. I don't know how to do it. You could show me how to do it, I wouldn't be able to do it. I promise. I don't know how to hack. So I'm sorry, this whole lawsuit is useless. It accuses me of hacking. I don't think Bob knows how to hack either, but he'll have to answer for himself. This lawsuit bears zero relationship to what actually happened. It's like two different realities. The reality and then the Biden world, which is a world of lies, corruption, defamation, perversion. It isn't even funny. I mean, this hard drive that I got was a piece of crap. I mean, so they say I manipulated his. I never had his data. His data is in a computer that is, as far as I know, with the FBI, although at one point they said they couldn't find it. So something being the Gregg FBI, that level of the FBI, I guess isn't secure. One would say, it's with the FBI with great confidence, but could they have misplaced it? How do I know? I never touched, saw, or anything to do with his computer. I got a copy of a hard drive. Now, what's a hard drive? A hard drive is a copy that's made of a computer. And as far as I can tell, I got it from somebody who was lawfully entitled to do that because I saw the contract that says that over a period of time, if it's not recovered, it becomes the man's property. And it hadn't been recovered over well beyond that period. And the man who gave it to my lawyer, who gave it to me, had it from way beyond that period of time. We checked the documents. We verified with experts the validity of the hard drive, that it was indeed Hunter Biden's hard drive. Hunter Biden's lawyer helped us with that by calling at the last minute the New York Post and asking for his client's laptop or the hard drive related to a laptop back. In other words, he authenticated it as an agent for Hunter Biden, something that people like to ignore, that it was authenticated right out of the mouth of his own lawyer, right at the very beginning, before it was even published by the New York Post. The New York Post then went through its own authentication of it. And now, 16 months later, that's been acknowledged by all of the newspapers that spent months and months defaming us, that it was, in fact, Hunter Biden's hard drive. As far as I can tell, and this is from information we get from the congressional hearings, this computer was validated by the FBI long before I ever got any of this information. And whatever information the FBI has, it has. There's nothing I could do to change it, alter it, make it any different. The only thing I could do is look at the copy I was given and relate it to the public and make it available to, in most important case, the New York Post. I gave them an entire copy of it, and they went ahead and published the portions that now probably most of it. Others had copies of it as well, and now it's on several websites. The hard drive. The original computer is with the FBI. It was all done by hand. There was no hacking involved, no manipulation involved. Now, here are the interesting things about this lawsuit. So I'm not going to go into too much of the strategy of it because there's a lot of strategy here that could be enormously helpful to the public, meaning in helping to reveal even further the exceedingly excessive number of crimes committed by this crime family, which is what they are. They are a 30 to 35-year-old organization that exists for the purpose of selling a product, an illegal product, Joe Biden's office. They've made a fortune doing that. They've made a fortune selling his office and selling out the United States of America, even to some of our worst enemies like Red China, Russia, to some of those criminals in the world, people who commit murder, people who are organized criminals. These are very, very bad and dangerous people. The first thing about this lawsuit is they may not have standing to bring it because he strangely now alleges that it was an alleged laptop computer, not his. I thought we had gone through that already. At first, it wasn't his, then it was his. Now, we're not sure it's his, or he's not sure it's his. Then how does he have standing to bring this lawsuit if it's not his? There'd be no case of controversy. The case should be dismissed for that reason alone. Now, there's a reason I probably would rather it not be dismissed, which is boy, would I love to take his deposition. And considering that he's the plaintiff, he's going to have to be deposed first. I mean, these are his allegations, not ours. I can't prove or disprove these. I got to question him. I mean, I never hacked anything in my life. He claims I did. Show me how I did it. Show me your proof that I hacked something. If you do, you'll teach me something I don't know. Huh? Show me how I put the child pornography on there. That wasn't yours. Since one of them involves bodily contact with you. Show me how that happened. Explain to me where all these underage girls come from. Explain to me, I don't know, did you or did you not write to your daughter that for 30 years, you, Hunter Biden, have been paying all the expenses of your family and still have to give half your income to your father? First of all, did you text that? It sure seems like you did. You've never denied it. It's been out there publicly for years. You've never denied it. And seems like it's true with all the texts that go back and forth between you and Eric Schwerin. You know who he is, right? About all the expenses you pay. Your father has 1,000 times said he didn't know anything about your foreign dealings, yet the hard drive is filled with your father having meetings with your foreign clients, some of them very notorious criminals. Your father having private meetings with them, public meetings with them. There's one very, very damaging audio recording that your father left on your telephone, in which he makes it clear that he read all about your Chinese foreign dealings. Thought you were in the clear, kind of like the way a criminal says you're in the clear. That's your father's voice, no doubt about it. He even identifies himself. Like to know Did you ever hear that? I mean, when you came home, did you hear the conversation? And since you had all these conversations with your father about your foreign dealings, why did you let him lie that much? And why did he lie that much? You know, those are false exculpatory statements that are going to be used in the eventual trial of you and your father as admissions of your intent to commit a crime. Did you ever count how many there are on there? And all those very, very personal notes back and forth. Somebody make those up. Pretty sick stuff, huh? This is a sick family, a perverted family, and a criminal family. If it weren't for that, this would be like a joke. And in civil procedure, we'd give this complaint an F- for being poorly written and not making any sense, and not giving the defendants enough information to even be able to answer. This is a complete fiction. So,
Mayor, before we move on, we have a short video of Hunter denying, or basically saying, "I'm pretty sure I didn't drop off a laptop." Should we play that and then come back with our guest?
sure.
They used the weapon of me against my dad.
Near the end of the 2020 campaign, another weapon emerged.
This laptop is a disaster for them. How the hell did he ever let go of this sucker? You know?
Allies of President Trump and supporters in the media promoted incriminating evidence allegedly found on a laptop belonging to Biden.
You've seen the pictures, folks.
It was delivered to the FBI by the owner of a Delaware computer store. You make just one reference to it in the book.
Yeah.
Is that laptop yours?
You don't need a laptop. You got a book. You got the book. It's all in the book. And I don't know. I truly...
You don't know?
The serious answer is that I truly do not know the answer to that.
Did you leave a laptop with a repairman
Not
in
that I
Wilmington?
remember.
Not that you
I
remember?
No. But whether or not somebody has my laptop, whether or not I was hacked, whether or not there exists a laptop at all, I truly don't know.
Are you missing a laptop?
Not that I know of, but you read the book and you'll realize that I wasn't keeping tabs on possessions very well for about a 4-year period of time.
Now we're bringing the guest. Introduce Gregg. Yeah, he's not in yet.
So by the last answer, it sounds like he's telling us that he was so far gone, and we know it's on crack cocaine, that he doesn't really know what he did, which makes him a very poor witness or a very poor plaintiff, because he doesn't know what he's alleging, which makes this all pretty useless. If he can't remember, if he doesn't know he's missing a laptop, and this was the primary one that he used during that period of time, then how much of this is accurate recollection? It bears no relationship to anything that any of us know about. Maybe this is a product of his crack-infested mind, which you can see on the many, many photos on his hard drive made from his laptop, of him sitting in a closet with no clothes on, smoking dope, or driving an automobile smoking dope, putting the lives of innocent people in jeopardy, or carrying around a gun as a drug addict. During a period of time, there are pictures of him taking dope and carrying a gun around. That's the kind of person we're dealing with here. And his father's worse, because his father was the architect of it. And in his own words, got 50% of all of his income. But I think the coup de grace here would be getting a chance to take his deposition and requiring him to answer these questions, because he's never really been questioned, has he? Hasn't been held to account in any way, while other people have been searched, put in prison, put in solitary confinement, held without bail, questioned constantly, falsely accused. He hasn't been touched at all. The prince has filed a lawsuit. It should say, AKA the prince. Well, we have with us a very, very distinguished gentleman who is going to help us take a look back in a general but very, very useful way at the election of 2020, because there's sort of a fiction that's been developed that you can't question anything about it. That, oh my goodness, it was pristine. I think Gregg Phillips has spent more time than anyone, or as much time as anyone, reviewing it. Gregg, how are you?
Doing great, Mayor. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. I'm doing really fine. Tell us a little, Gregg, just briefly about your background and how you got involved in taking a look at this 2020 election.
I grew up in Republican politics in the South back in the early 1980s, and was involved in a lot of different things. Seeing a lot of chaos going on inside the polls with too many people registered to vote that live in the counties and so on and so forth. And it became a bit of a passion for me. And I've had the great opportunity to work in a bunch of elections all over the country and frankly, all over the world. And, I think the saddest part of all, Mayor, is that, we as Americans, because we believe in American exceptionalism, we believe that's true across the board. But when it comes to elections, America is the process, and really everything involved is woefully inadequate.
So, how did you first get involved with 2020? And do you want to, by way of example, do we want to focus on just one state, or do you want to give us a general view?
Well, let's talk a little bit about it broadly, and then we'll kind of hone in a little bit. We, like everybody else, we're focusing on the main battleground states. We were focused in Pennsylvania. We were focused in Wisconsin. We were looking in Michigan and Arizona and Georgia, of course. And as some of the other states where people were concerned began to really unfold in an expected way in Florida and Texas and in some other places, we just kind of turned our sights toward those. My company is a contractor for Catherine Engelbrecht and the great folks at True the Vote. And Catherine and I have worked together over the years and found a variety of means can support her and her grassroots team of activists in evaluating elections as they go. So we sort of do some of the technical pieces, and they do the hard work. And we were monitoring these elections in those states for Catherine, and I mean, there's a lot of things that kind of pop out at me, and I think back to them now, and it's like, wow, that was legit. It was real. We were watching, for example, all of the early voting come in Michigan, and generally you can look at different things as you're trying to assess whether or not there's a velocity, whether it's moving in a certain direction or not, or you can kind of, if you've been around for a while, you kind of get a little bit of a feel for it. Well, we have this mapping software and the targeting software that we use, and we were watching inner city Detroit, so Wayne County, inner city Detroit, and we were watching the most intense blue I've ever seen before. Even it's almost impossible to get 100% of anything at that wide a scale. And there were tens of thousands of votes. And as you pulled back and looked at the map, it was so intensely blue. We're just like, this just can't be.
And this is
at the same time, we
voting.
were getting reports from places like this is early voting. Same time, we're getting reports from places like San Luis, Arizona, a little tiny town on the border in South Yuma County. and hearing the same basic things that ballots are being bundled, collected, and stuffed in these drop boxes. And we started to feel a little bit of the pattern, right? So it's kind of a feel. By the way, Mayor, one of my longtime friends to work for you, a guy named Chris Hennick, from Mississippi, and Chris and I knew each
great
other
man.
years ago, and that's how I first met you, actually, back in those days. And so we were really beginning to sort of hone in Arizona and Michigan and Wisconsin and Georgia. And Georgia really was peculiar to us, and we were getting a lot of reports. We were getting reports from the public. We were getting reports. One famous situation, or sort of infamous at this juncture, a guy's mom contacted me through a mutual friend of ours that she worked for, and said, "Hey, my son came home and said he was making all this money by collecting ballots and putting them in these drop boxes." I'm like, "What?" So I went over and met with the guy, and we got this crazy story about all this that was going on, and it really allowed us then to really focus in on what we found in Arizona, what we were seeing in Michigan, and what we were seeing in Georgia, and really kind of honing in on
this guy was in
Catherine is long
Georgia.
that
First one?
the kind of the cornerstone of all cheating in election process, but dirty voter rolls. Dirty voter rolls leads to dirty election, and we knew that there were, in all of these places, people kept saying to us, "Yeah, but cheating, where are the ballots coming from?" Well, the ballots come ballots to people that either don't live where they used to live, or they're inactive, or all of a sudden, Mayor, the whole thing just came together for us, and we're like, okay, we've got something happening here. And so we dug straight in and put our entire team on really trying to assess how we had gone from all of the changes that were made through all the consent decrees, Mark Elias and all these people coming into all these states and getting them to mail out ballots to everybody, active, inactive, everybody, whether they live there or not, who cares. And so there were all these extra ballots in play. And that's where you started seeing, people show up at ballot drop boxes with all these different ballots and putting them in the boxes and whatnot, that ultimately became mules. But to us, I think the challenge that we had was that we were, of course, fighting the November election. We were filing lawsuits. I think we had 4 or 5 lawsuits out there that we were trying to do, but the courts were asking one important. We'll agree, or might agree, that the rolls are dirty, and there's a lot of people on these rolls that shouldn't be. Who voted? Who voted illegally? Well, that's an answer that doesn't come till way. What we found yet again, and we've long said this: once they certify the election, right? I mean, and so there was this zeal to push through, these certifications, and it's now, of course, famous and a matter of history. And they claimed they were doing these risk audits, and there was all these different. But all they were doing was counting and recounting the ballots. That's a problem, because there were a lot of ballots that shouldn't have been there. But what we really needed to know, how many ineligible voters had cast ballots. That is for
Greg?
them, the state, to report
Greg,
all of these.
We're going to take a brief.
Ineligible had voted, and so we could then count those up, and we'd be ready to go.
Greg, we're going to take a brief pause, and we'll be back in a minute. And what we'll do is we'll focus on Georgia as an example, because I think the numbers there kind of illustrate pretty quickly what you're talking about. We'll be right back after this message from Tunnel to Towers. Towers Foundation delivers on its promise to do good and never forget the sacrifices America's greatest heroes have made for us. Heroes who risked their lives to keep our communities and our country safe. Heroes like United States Marine Corps Captain and pilot John Jeremy Sachs. Captain Sachs sustained fatal injuries when his military aircraft crashed during training, killing him and 5 other service members. He's remembered by loved ones as courageous, brilliant, and devoted to his career, family, and friends. John is survived by his wife, Amber, who gave birth to their second daughter 3 months after his death. Tunnel to Towers paid the mortgage on the family home for Amber and their 2 daughters. The foundation has helped over 1,000 military and first responder families navigate the worst of times by removing the burden of a mortgage payment. Our nation's heroes and their families need your help now more than ever. Donate $11 a month to Tunnel to Towers at T2T.org. T2T.org. That's T, the number 2T.org. T2T.org. Please donate now. And let me reiterate that. Make your contribution to T2T.org. That's $11 a month to take care of our heroes, those who are injured severely and those who lose their lives in the line of duty. That's what Tunnel to Towers does day in and day out. Take care of those people. You want to be part of that. Let's go back to Gregg. Gregg, why don't you just give us a brief description of Georgia as kind of an example of what you're talking about, the ineligible voters, and then the inability for some time to figure out how many of them voted, didn't vote, how many votes were cast in their name. I think that would be would simplify things a bit for people.
Sure. So in 2019, Mark Elias and Stacey Abrams sued the state of Georgia. They sued them to prevent them from. So this was a project that they started working on back in 2019. So they sued the Secretary of State and said, you can no longer clean these voter rolls. So by the time 2020 rolls around, there's all the people that have moved. We had all these, all the chaos of the, all the COVID stuff and all the different things that were going on. But about Americans move every year. So, kind of give you a sense that if you don't clean the rolls for 2 years, you're going to end up with a whole bunch of people on those rolls that may or may not be eligible to vote in the jurisdiction in which they're registered. So Abrams and Elias sued Raffensperger to prevent him from cleaning those rolls. Then a year later, they went to the State Board of Elections and Raffensperger and got them to agree not only to the ballot drop boxes, but got them to agree to mail all of the people on the rolls, whether they were active or inactive or eligible or ineligible. They coerced them into mailing every single person on those rolls, everybody. So now what you have is you have a situation where the state knew it because they were in a lawsuit. It was orchestrated by Abrams and Mark Elias, and they had the best case scenario. Now you've got a whole bunch of mail being sent out to folks who either don't live in their county or don't live in the state.
How many?
And those mail-in ballots, ultimately, there were 364,000 people ineligible to vote on the voter rolls on election day. Of those 364,000 people, 67,284 people voted. So you have 67,000 ineligible votes. And remember, the state knew this, Raffensperger knew it, because they had been sued. They were already in court. A couple of weeks later, the canvassing happens, right? Where they go out and they count everything up and whatnot. then, everybody was screaming and complaining. So they went in and they counted again. And then they did some kind of a crazy risk limiting audit. There were all sorts of problems with all of that. But be mindful, at no time did Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State, nor anyone else on the State Board of Elections in Georgia say anything to anyone about the 67,000 voters that were ineligible who voted. The way we found out about this is, you remember there was a runoff election for 2 Senate seats that was going to happen on January 5th. And so it was the entire center of the political universe outside of the challenges from the November election. This runoff election was a big deal. It was a huge deal. Pretty much everybody came from everywhere. There was millions and millions and millions of dollars flowing in. And there is a statute in Georgia, as in many states, that allows citizens to challenge another citizen's right to vote or eligibility to vote if they don't live there anymore. So in other words, if it was you, let's say you were my next door neighbor and I knew you moved, I could go in and write to the county and say, I challenge Rudy Giuliani's right to vote because I believe he moved. That's all they have to do. We knew that this was going to be fiery because we helped citizens in Georgia challenge 364,000 voters in that runoff. And remember, this was just a week after Raffensperger had signed the certification of the election. 1 week later, Catherine and about 10 people in Raffensperger's office, along with Ryan Germany, there were all kinds of folks in there. Catherine walked in and said, listen, we are about to help challenge 364,000 voters because this is a big number and it's going to leave a mark. Brad Raffensperger gets out a piece of paper, does a little bit of math on a piece of paper and says, yeah, it sounds about right. 2 years without cleaning the rolls, 364,000 sounds about right. This is what the Republican Party should have been doing all the time. Catherine's like, well, wait, what? Look, I'm just in here telling you you're about to have a problem, and we're about to challenge all these people. The following Monday, on the 15th of December, we helped challenge 364,000 voters. The next day, bring Mark Elias back into the game. Mark Elias then sends a letter threatening lawsuit to every single county in Georgia, saying, if you take up True the Vote's challenges, we're going to sue you counties into oblivion. Threaten them. The next day, Elias and Abrams and Fair Fight Action, their PAC, sued me and Catherine and our organizations and everybody else. We go to trial on that case here in a few weeks. Here's why this is relevant. Remember the order of events here. So November 3rd, we have the election. Approximately 3 weeks later, they canvass, they recount again, they do a risk limiting audit. He finally certifies the vote. The next week, Catherine goes in and says, but there are 364,000 voters that we don't want voting in the runoff. We weren't even talking about November 3rd at that point. We were just saying, look, there's a lot of voters on here that shouldn't be voting. The problem that everyone had, right, was except for apparently you and a few others and Donald J. Trump, was that he didn't believe the Raffenspergers of the world, right? He didn't, he didn't believe these dumb lawyers that were hanging around him saying, hey, nothing to see here. He didn't believe Bill Barr, right? Who
Well, there's
quit
a
on
good
the
reason for that I'll
Christmas
explain
Eve.
in a little while.
He didn't believe, yeah. Well,
There's a good reason he didn't
so the
believe
president didn't believe any of this. Agreed. But rightly so, Mayor. Because think about that call then that now happens. So we challenge all those voters on the 15th of December. 2 weeks later, they're on that now famous call where President Trump's talking to them and saying, look, I know there's all these problems, and Raffensperger's saying, no, Mr. President, no, that's not right. You just have bad information, and you got, bad people, and Gregg and Catherine are racist, and whatever they say, right? I mean, it's just chaos. But remember this though, Mayor. He knew because we told him, if he didn't already know, that 364,000 ineligible voters were on those voter rolls. He never sought to find out. The answer, 67,284 ballots were cast. 67,000. Trump was right. They were wrong. There's no question. And at this juncture, now they're coming after us, of course, and they're trying to subpoena us and get all of my, all of my sources and all of my people and whatever. But think about what's happening now, everybody. I mean, Donald Trump stood. Look, it's Mayor. You faced this before in maybe the most profound way that anyone can imagine on 9/11, right? You got all kinds of people, and I've been in leadership roles before and worked for governors and senators and prime ministers and all these people. When crisis time comes, there's a lot of people around you that have some advice, right? Oh, don't believe that guy, believe me, or don't believe her, believe him. And they're eating here. There's nothing going on here. There's no coup happening. There's nothing going on here, Mr. President. Don't worry about it. Donald Trump instinctively and rightly reacted to the people telling him the truth. And so rather than listening to these Bill Bars, I'll just keep throwing that one out because it's fun, right? He attacks us all the everything else. He was wrong. He lied. He was wrong. Whatever it is that caused him to do what he did. But now they're coming back and saying, well, the president should have listened to all these people, and he should have listened to Bill Barr, and he should have listened to Brad Raffensperger, and he should have listened to all the lies being told to him. 67,000 votes were cast by ineligible voters.
Now, how did you determine that number, Gregg? How did you determine the number?
We took our 300. Yeah. So what we do is we're very good at this. We're very good at identity resolution, residency resolution. We own a healthcare company where we have to do these things on a regular basis. And so we know this business and know it really well. I have the best single team on the planet to do this kind of thing. But in this case, it was fairly simple. We had to sort of true up the addresses, right? So it might be listed as PO box or whatever. So you got to get it right. You got to get all the addresses just right. You got to add the +4 on the zip. You got to do all those things and get those rolls sort of clean, which we did. This is how we arrived at this 364,000. Then we went to the National Change of Address Register.
All right, a second here. Let's go to, maybe we'll take our second commercial and come back with Gregg.
We're going to take a short break, Gregg, and we're going to do a commercial break, and then we'll be right back.
The year is 2022. Cancel culture is the new normal. Online freedom, as we know it, has ended. Digital stockades are here. All activity is monitored, stored, and predictively analyzed by a technological cartel. We're being converted into a digital resource, a digital currency to be farmed for metadata and loaded into a computerized combine, blockchained to a social engineering operating system. However, it doesn't have to be this way. Be part of a new technological revolution. Right now, 1,000 test pilots have launched themselves into a new digital frontier, a private network outside of big tech control. New technology with state-of-the-art digital engagement and never-done-before security and privacy features that are now operational. With Quick's digital engagement, entertainment, communication, and commercial exchange will never be the same. We are QUX. Quick's. Advanced pre-release sales are limited to 3,000. Order now by visiting quicks.tv. Get yours now before they sell out. Be part of a brand new online experience that you control.
Welcome back. And remember, before we go back to Gregg, I want to remind you of your daily requirement to keep yourself healthy and to keep yourself energetic and to make sure you get all the nutrients and everything else that you need from fruit and from vegetables, which are really the source of, oh my goodness, so many of the different supplements that you take and the reason why you're taking them. If you take Balance of Nature every day, and I take 2 in the morning and 2 in the evening of each of the, here's the fruits. Here's the fruits. Here's the vegetables. And I like to take them right in front of you because I want to show you how easy it is to swallow it. Even Rudy can do it. There you go. You can get these at balanceofnature.com, promo code Rudy, 35% discount on the big bottles and $25 off on the travel bottle. And it's as simple as, you probably should take 2 at a time. I usually put down 4, but I don't want to give a bad example. I'm going to suggest you order this, and then we can take them together at night. Go to balanceofnature.com, promo code Rudy for your discount, and then we can toast each other. Let me just catch you up to date on what Gregg is telling us. Very simple, right? Based on the analysis that was done before the election, and on election day, it was known that because the voter rolls hadn't been purged, meaning cleaning out the people who have died, the people who have moved either to another county or out of the state, so that the rolls in a particular voting district, right, reflect the people who truly are entitled to vote there. Since that hadn't been done for 2 years, based on interference by the Democrat Party, who didn't want it done. Query, why don't they want it done? I know why. I've been involved in elections in New York. Did you know they cheat in New York? And this is commonly done. I mean, there was one situation where they hadn't been cleaned in about 8 years. Can you imagine all the dead people on that road? Well, they determined that there were 364,000, that's the number right there, 364,000 ineligible voters on the rolls. In other words, they were registered to a place they no longer lived at that address. They should have been stricken from the rolls. If they moved out of the state, not accounted for at all in Georgia. And if they moved somewhere else in Georgia and registered there, then accounted for there. The problem is when the election took place on November 3rd, and actually for a month before, right? You don't get a list of the people who actually voted. So a lot of the analysis and work that was being done by me and other lawyers and by Gregg and his organization and organizations like that are based on analysis and extrapolation, and you don't get the voters until sometimes as late as March, April, May of the next year, which is kind of crazy. Well, they knew that a lot of the vote was ineligible. So did Ratzenberger. He knew it for a second reason. He had a report sitting in his desk with 48 irregularities that he hid, that he covered up. He also covered this up. When they finally got the names of the people who voted after the election, they went back and very painstakingly went and found how many of those 364,000 actually are accounted for as a vote. And that number, as he told us, is 67,284. Now, that doesn't mean they actually voted. It could mean that a fraudulent ballot was prepared where they checked the name, let's say Biden, and then they attributed that vote to one of these people. That's the more likely way those votes took place. Gregg, are you with me?
Gregg, can you hear us? All right, we're going to get Gregg back on here. We'll get him back on, Mayor.
Just see if you will come back tomorrow night or the next night.
Yeah.
Gregg?
So we're trying to get Gregg back on, Mayor, but in the meantime, maybe we're going to try to get him back on. He's off right now. Yeah.
But I think I've given you a summary of this this situation. Ted will continue to work on getting him back, but I think that's a fair summary of what he just told you about just one aspect of ineligible voters in Georgia. Now, tomorrow night, I will go through with you. Pardon me? Tomorrow we'll go through Michigan and Wisconsin and look for similar, or if I shouldn't say similar, but other kinds of irregularities. Now, here's the point of this. The point of this is that the former president of the United States is being prosecuted because they say he didn't believe really that the election was fraudulent and stolen. Well, I'm going to tell you he did. I think if you know him and you've watched him, you're going to know that too. But the most important thing is the way you determine that is, did he have a reasonable basis for questioning it? Well, what I just showed you is a reasonable basis for questioning it. Instead, when you do this, which is a very logical analysis, the establishment goes crazy. They go livid. They go into a state of conniption in which you're accused of being a liar, supporting treason, supporting insurrection. This isn't about treason, insurrection, or anything else. It's about, did they steal an election or not? It wouldn't be the first election that was stolen in the history of the world or the United States. Now, I'm going to also supply something else that I wasn't able to because of the communication with Gregg. He said, certain people were telling him, well, the election is valid, the election is valid. And he didn't believe them. One of them that's used very often is, well, your own attorney general told you.
Oh, there he is.
His own attorney general was part of the cover-up of the hard drive. Don't you remember that? Yeah, I mean, any attorney general that would cover up that hard drive in which 51 intelligence agents lied their whatchamacallits off to defraud the American people and said it was filled with Russian earmarks, which now has been totally disproven. Any attorney general that would conceal that, conceal the hundreds of crimes that were on there, the millions of dollars in bribery, hold it back, when it had been already validated, when it had already been validated by the FBI and had been validated as not being Russian disinformation, but would allow that charge to remain out there. So that now 20% of the people say they would have voted differently if they'd known about it. Any attorney general who did that, you wouldn't trust. And he knew that.
So,
Greg, are you with us?
Yeah. So we're gonna have what? Greg, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear. Can you hear?
Oh, we hear you fine now, Greg. Sorry for the.
Got a terrible connection. I don't know what the deal is.
Are you okay
Can you
now?
hear me at all?
I can hear you fine. Can you hear us? Tell you what we're going to do. Greg has given us plenty of his time and plenty of his analysis. We're going to have him back either tomorrow or the next night, in which we're going to take a look at Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, as well as another review of Georgia, since it's been really, I guess Georgia has been, because of the cases, has been focused on the most, and that's the place where they're alleging that the president knowingly lied by saying that he believed there was voter fraud, when in fact there's a mountain of evidence to support someone in their belief that there was voter fraud. And then from the point of view of being his lawyer, that's evidence that it isn't a matter of whether I believe it or I don't believe it, but that's evidence I have to argue in favor of my client. The duty of a lawyer is to view, I'll give it to you exactly the way it was taught to me in law school. I think every lawyer will remember this. You have to view the evidence in the light most favorable to your client. Of course you do. Otherwise, you can't be his agent, his representative. The layman doesn't know the law. You supply that for him. And then if there's an interpretation that can be made that is favorable to your client, you're supposed to argue that interpretation. And if there's a basis for it, then of course nothing wrong with that. Even though there might be another interpretation. That's why you have a trial, because there's another interpretation of it and another view of it. Somebody else might have something different to say about this. They get a chance to put their witness up and say something different. But when you see this, 364,000 ineligible voters, and you have an attorney general that basically tells you the election's perfect, of course you distrust that attorney general. I'm talking about Ratzenberger. Or if you have an attorney general that has a hard drive that shows that there was no Russian interference or disinformation that came from an American, not from a Russian. And 51 intelligence agents put out a putrid, horrible statement that they spend one day preparing, which is an obvious lie and a setup. Well, of course you're not going to trust that attorney general. So I think that this gives you an example, and opens your mind to the fact there are two sides to this. This is not a situation where there's only one side, and they are trying to eliminate that side by shouting it down, the way they did with Russian collusion, right? Anyone who questioned Russian collusion was colluding with the Russians. Turned out that Russian collusion wasn't only false, it was manufactured and paid for by the Democrat Party. It cost them bare minimum $1.2 million in dirty money from Hillary Clinton. And that's what we're dealing with. Those are the kinds of people we're dealing with. People who would create Russian collusion as a frame-up of an innocent man. People who would cover up a hard drive when it was relevant in probably the most critical way to an election. People who would make up the phony story about the Ukrainian conversation with the president of Ukraine by then President Trump, which, by the way, would have been totally disproven if Barr hadn't hidden the hard drive. People who would do that, let's not say they did fix the election, but they're certainly capable of it. Where's the moral distinction between the fraud involved in covering up the hard drive and the fraud involved in taking 60,000 registrations and attaching them to phony votes that were manufactured in a factory 2 blocks from the arena? And maybe that would also explain why you would never let anybody look at the ballots. Never. They wouldn't do. They counted the ballots over and over again, but they were the same phony ballots. They would never allow an independent forensic examination of the ballots. We had the man ready to do it. We had the machine ready. We had the process ready. We were more than willing to have anybody look at it and guard it. But in these 4 or 5 crooked states, or cities really, I'm going to look at the ballots. You stay back 40 feet. Stay behind those rails. Did you ever see that before? 5 different places, those rails, Republicans put behind the guardrails. And they all figure that out themselves. Like the guy in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia, figured it out. The guy in Pittsburgh, the guy in Detroit, the guy in Milwaukee, the guy in Las Vegas, the guy in Atlanta. They all got the same guardrails. They all decided Republicans all of a sudden can't examine the absentee ballots. I used to look at absentee ballots when I was involved in that kind of thing. It was the first election where it wasn't allowed. Why were they so careful not to let you see the paper? Because, as I said, there were 364,000 ineligible voters. 64,000 plus so-called voted, but I'm telling you, they didn't vote. Those were ballots that were created to fix the vote and then attached to those registrations because they were pretty certain, particularly if they had moved out of the state, that they weren't going to come back and vote. Now, you might remember, and this is why we'll go over Senator Ligon's report, that a number of people, I forget the exact number now, showed up on election day and said, I want to vote. Can't vote. You already voted. No, I didn't. I remember a young lady, it was her first vote, and she was crying both on the witness stand in the state legislature and she was crying on election day because they wouldn't let her vote because they told her she had voted already. No, she didn't. She was in this little group, or maybe a group like it, where they had taken her registration. And because she was underage at the time, and then she became of age, they used it for a phony vote, playing the odds that young people usually don't vote. This is the way they operate. Now, how do I know that? Because people told me that. Witnesses who were ready to testify, but the courts decided we're not going to touch it, which is why I made the decision with the president to go to the state legislatures and put all this evidence out there. It's all there. Senator Ligon's report is comprehensive, it's accurate, it's based on numerous witnesses. When we go over it, I think it's going to be quite an eye-opener for you about the quality of the evidence that exists about voter fraud. Why review it? Because it can't happen again. And we'll talk about that too as we move along. This can never happen again if we want to remain America. This is the most valuable thing we have, isn't it? The right to vote. This is the way we protect all those other rights. Right to vote, right of free speech, and the right to worship God the way we want to. That's the core of what makes us Americans. If we don't believe in that, we're not Americans. If we don't have it, we start to become, like China, like Venezuela, like Russia was, like Germany was. And we're starting to become like that. So we're not going to take our eye off this, and we're not going to listen to the people who say, oh, forget about it. It's just the past. Hillary still hasn't gotten over 16. She's just on the other day saying she was cheated out of 16. How come she can say that and they don't try to put her in jail? And if Trump says it, they want to execute him. Think there's a two-tier system of justice? No, you don't think it. You know it. Right? Of course you know it. So we're going to conclude on a somewhat lighter note. Well, this isn't a light note. This is, we can't let this pass. I'd like you to play for the people Biden's description of the rap star. And I'd like to ask people a question as we call it a night. Do you have that available, Ted?
LLJ Cool J. By the way, that man's got biceps bigger than my thighs. I think.
I'll play it again for you, right here, Mayor.
Oh, well, we want to.
LLJ Cool J. By the way, that man's got biceps bigger than my thighs. I think.
Okay, now do we have one with the governor of his discussion of the governor of Maryland a few months earlier?
Yeah, it'll take a second, but I can get that up.
Yeah, I just want to show you. This is not an accident that it refers to black men as boys. Does the president? This is also the president who has told us that he didn't want his kids to go to school in the jungle, which meant the black area. This is also the president who eulogized with magnificent words a former Grand Cyclops of the Ku Klux Klan. And he was defended by the press because they said right-wing Republicans accused him of eulogizing the Grand Dragon. He wasn't the Grand Dragon, he was the Grand Cyclops. That's like saying the guy murdered 10 people. I said the guy murdered 10 people. He did not. Giuliani's lying. He murdered only 5. I mean, the defenses of this guy are ridiculous. If he were aware enough, he'd probably be laughing all the way to the bank. I mean, he's made millions on this. Millions. Family's been selling his office for years and making fools out of you. And people vote for him anyway. Man, it's like that Menendez thing. Who do we blame Menendez on? The people in New Jersey who voted for him. That's who we blame him on. They had every warning possible with the prior trial. He wasn't acquitted. He was found guilty. And he got off on a technicality. He took a fortune. He's a crooked, slimy New Jersey bum politician. Started like a street rat, the way the Bidens did. And then started to make big money and gold bars. It's the influence of communism that does it, really. But we'll get into that some other time. And we'll talk about Menendez also at another time. But it gives you an idea that that party is rotting from the top. But that top it's not just Biden. It's not the only crook in the Democrat Party. It's a problem. It's more than just an individual here, an individual there. This party has had a problem for a long, long time. Look at the cities. Look at the condition of the cities. The crime, murder, the way they double-crossed the black community in those cities, the way they double-crossed them and not giving them the right protection against crime, the way they double-crossed them in opposing choice in education so they can cave into the Communist Teachers Union. This is the party of slavery. Party of segregation, and the party of the Grand Cyclops that Biden loved as a mentor. Imagine your mentor being a Grand Cyclops of the Ku Klux Klan.
So let's play the LL Cool J one more time, and then the Maryland governor, and I want people to listen to see the similarities. It's kind of weird if you think about it.
LLJ Cool J. By the way, that man's got biceps bigger than my thighs. I think.
Okay, so that was just the other day, and now we're gonna play this next clip. This is from about, I think maybe a year ago, and it's Biden referring to the
I think it was
governor
right
of
after the
Maryland.
inauguration of the governor. Yeah.
And Westmore, I tell you. He's the real deal, and the boy looked like he can still play. He got some guns on him. You got a hell of a new governor in Westmore, I tell you. He's the real deal, and the boy looked like he can still play. He got.
You know, it's funny. That first one he didn't even catch, Ted. The second one he caught, right? He said,
Yeah.
boy, and then he said, the man.
Yeah.
But the first one, it's like he just goes right over it. Like he talks that way all the time.
Crazy.
I happen to know they do. Well, I'm not. Look, the guy's a racist, okay? I need to prove it. I will. How about you're not black if you don't vote for me? Ow. Oh, I think it's turning. Don't you think so, Ted?
100%, it is turning. You saw the
when you
recent
look
polling.
at that 10% poll
Yeah.
that knocked them for a loop, a couple of those people haven't recovered yet. They're still getting oxygen. No, did you know that?
Yeah, of course.
10% of the Democrats in D.C. had to go for oxygen when they saw that poll.
Well, it's like 2016 with the what would they call those? The cry rooms and the safe spaces. After Trump won, didn't have all these schools canceled classes and kids.
Well, you know, I
couldn't go in.
represented.
Yeah, it was nuts.
I
that
represented
was-
a young girl, and
Yeah. Cry
they tortured this young girl for 4 years. But she said, right after the election, they really were bad on her, and they wouldn't let her go because she was a Trump supporter. She wasn't allowed to go to the safety rooms. What were they called? Safety rooms. What were they called?
What?
The rooms, the safe rooms,
safe spaces. It's,
The
I think
safe
one of the
spaces,
early
yeah,
times we heard
where
of
you
those.
could cry over
And
Trump.
cry and counselors. Schools had counselors. They had counselors.
This is before they brought in drag queens, though. Now they bring in drag queens to do the counseling,
Oh gosh.
right?
Yeah, it's
And
bizarre.
who knows? Maybe they'd bring in doctors to do
To give you,
operations.
to give you the jab.
No, maybe to mutilate you without telling your parents.
Yeah, or that.
Look, it's not a joke. It's really serious. I told you. The reason for Menendez is people in New Jersey, like the people in New York, are brainwashed. They vote Democrat, even though Democrats are crook. They vote Democrat in Chicago, even though black kids are getting killed left and right. They vote Democrat in New York, even though New York is crooked as all the rest of them. Got to shake this party up. Change its name the way the Cleveland Indians became what? The Guardians? And the other ones became the Commanders? I don't know. Why don't you call them the Commanders Party or something? Huh? Something like that. The Commanders Party. Well, I want to give you a couple of notices. And so on Friday, we're going to have a real great time. We're gonna be at America First in Ronkonkoma, New York. We're going to come on earlier. We're going to come on at 7. We're going to go 7 to 9, which will get you ready for our earlier start next week, which will be 7 to 8 with a little soccer time like we have now, so you don't miss us at 8. And then we're getting ready for a new show also that'll be on. It'll be a half-hour show called America's Mayor Confidential. Got a lot of stuff involved in that we're going to let you know about, but it's really to start getting us serious about the big challenge that's coming up. We'll be back tomorrow night. As I said, we'll be talking about a couple of the other states. Maybe we'll have more on this. On Georgia? And Pennsylvania. Dr. Maria says on Thursday we're going to have Georgia and Pennsylvania on Thursday. Tomorrow, Michigan? Michigan and Wisconsin. You know, Ted comes from Michigan, so. And he is not that surprised.
Yeah. I mean, Detroit, my goodness. Like 2016, everyone started making a big stink about it. Like, guys, well, I thought we've been talking about this for decades, and now.
You know, the interesting thing is, who knows what they're going to make up tomorrow and sue me for? I swear, I do not know how to hack. I don't know how to hack. Sorry, Hunter, I don't know how to hack. You probably don't either. And I don't know how to do that type stuff. I don't know that.
He can't hack, but he knows crack.
You sure can do crack,
bumper
babe. I'll
sticker.
tell
That's
you
a
that.
bumper sticker.
Woo!
That's a great line. Yeah.
All right. Well,
Good night.
Yep.
you know what we always say. This is the fastest hour on the internet.
That's right. The fastest hour on the internet.
And
Wow.
God bless America. We'll see you tomorrow night. Our purpose to bring to bear the principle of common sense and rational discussion to the issues of our day. America was created at a time of great turmoil, tremendous disagreements, anger, hatred. It was a book written in 1776 that guided much of the discipline of thinking that brought to us the discovery of our freedoms, of our God-given freedoms. It was Thomas Paine's Common Sense, written in 1776, one of the first American bestsellers, in which Thomas Paine explained, by rational principles, the reason why these small colonies felt the necessity to separate from the Kingdom of Great Britain and the King of England. He explained their inherent desire for liberty, for freedom, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the ability to select the people who govern them. And he explained it in ways that were understandable to all the people, not just the elite. Because the desire for freedom is universal. The desire for freedom adheres in the human mind, and it is part of the human soul. This is exactly the time we should consult our history. Look at what we've done in the past and see if we can't use it to help us now. We understand that our founders created the greatest country in the history of the world, the greatest democracy, the freest country, a country that has taken more people out of poverty than any country ever. All of us are so fortunate to be Americans. But a great deal of the reason for America's constant ability to self-improve is because we're able to reason, we're able to talk, we're able to analyze,